Hello and welcome to Friday's virtual English session. So yesterday you would have written the first part of our newspaper report for Boy at the Back of the Class, and today we're just going to finish that off, so do the 3 remaining shapes. Now, question on the video on the flip, so can you remember the remaining shapes we need to write today? So pause the video now and see if you can quickly tell yourself the 3 last shapes that we need to write. See if you can remember. Okay, so yesterday we did our date, title, things like that. We did our summary paragraph. And then we did the main bulk of our newspaper report, which is the timeline, the chronological order of the events. So today we just need to put our 2 quotes in. And then we need to do our final concluding paragraph about what might happen in the future. So, who might we have quotes from in our newspaper report? So these might be slightly different to the sort of people that you had quotes from for your bus boycott one. So you might have, as a reporter, tracked down Stan the taxi driver and asked him some questions or asked him to make a comment. Now, he would probably not be commenting about the events because he wasn't there, but he could tell you about the sort of children they were, what sort of things they were talking about in the taxi. So you might need to think back to chapter 18 when they were actually in the taxi with him. He might think it was a bit strange that these 2 children were going to Buckingham Palace. He might not have believed them. You might have been able to track down Tom, who obviously can give you a lot more information. However, if you are choosing Tom, think about the sort of things that he might say. Now, he's not going to want to get in trouble for skipping school. Remember, his parents would probably see the news report or read it in the newspaper. So think carefully if you're going to do Tom about what sort of things he's going to actually say. Tom might be a tricky one to do. And also, you could do onlookers, or so you could choose 2 onlookers as your quotes. Now, an onlooker is somebody who's witnessed the event. So they weren't involved in it in any way, but it would have been somebody who was outside the palace at the time who saw it happen. So it might just be a regular person, a regular family that were visiting Buckingham Palace for the day. It might be another reporter who was there to report on the changing of guards. So you could choose any of these 3 people, or you could choose just 2 onlookers, different people, as your 2 quotes, as your 2 witnesses. Now, the reason that I haven't put the Queen's Guard on there is because you usually wouldn't be able to interview the Queen's Guard. So they're not going to be somebody that you can get a quote from for your newspaper report to report what's happened. So you sort of need to choose between these 3 people. You're not going to be able to talk to the narrator because, like we said yesterday, they might be taken off somewhere. They might be being protected by the police because they've just done this. So you're not going to be able to get a quote from them. But the closest you're going to get is Tom. But like I said, if you're going to choose Tom, think about what sort of things he's going to say because he's not going to want to get in trouble. So you need to choose 2 of these people. Like I said, you can choose 2 onlookers and just say that they're 2 different people. They might have different opinions. And remember, somebody who's witnessed the event might not always remember it very clearly. So it might actually be that their statement that they give isn't completely truthful because people remember things differently. Some people might exaggerate a little bit, which we've talked about in lessons before. So when you're thinking about what they're going to say, actually think about this. It's going to be a bit different from the bus boycott because that was a reporting on an event, a law that had happened, whereas this is somebody that has seen or been involved in the event. So people are going to have different versions of the story. They're going to give different opinions and things like that, which is really fun to play about with and write, but just keep that in mind when you're doing it, okay? So I haven't given you an example quote because we want this one to be a bit more independent. However, I have put Miss Garraway's quote from our bus boycott newspaper to give you an example of the sort of structure that you might use in your newspaper report when you're doing your quotes. So you obviously want to introduce who the person is, your witness. So if it's Stan the taxi driver, he's not going to be called Stan the taxi driver. He's going to be called Stan something, and he's going to be a taxi driver. So like it says 18-year-old Guy Bailey, he is Stan blah, 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 a taxi driver, okay? His name isn't going to be Stan the taxi driver because this is a formal newspaper. You might give a little bit of information about why they're important to the case. So it might be Sally Brown, a witness to the event, tells us. So you want to sort of give a bit of information about who they are. So they're not just a random person that you're giving a quote from in your newspaper. And then I've just circled the key part of how we structure speech to remind you. So you need to introduce it with a comma. You need speech marks either side. Speech always begins with a capital letter. And remember, if you've got your speech at the end, you need to finish it with a final piece of punctuation, not a comma. So a full stop, question mark, exclamation mark, but not a comma if your speech is at the end. If you're going to flip it round and say, it's been a long time coming, I'm ecstatic, said Guy Bailey, then you'd want your comma there, remember. But we've done lots of speech, we should know how to punctuate it. Now remember, your two quotes you need to separate into two different paragraphs, two different sections, because they're different witnesses giving different account. So I'd probably say about 5 minutes again for these two because it's only short bit, so 5 or 10 minutes. So pause the video and get your two quotes down. Think about who you're going to ask for the quote and think about what sort of things they're going to say. Okay, so we should have ticked off our two quotes from witnesses, people involved in the incident. So all we need to do now, which won't take very long, is do our future paragraph, so our concluding paragraph. So you will have recorded everything that's happened, and then this paragraph is about what could happen next. So you're reporting about what could happen next. Now what I want you to do when you're writing this paragraph is have a think. If a child had skipped school, had made their way to London on their own, had actually climbed over barriers into a private space, into Buckingham Palace, and had actually touched one of the guards, what do you think would happen next? Now remember, they are only children. So don't go too far extreme on what would happen. But also, depending on whether you wrote in your newspaper article whether the note was given or not, will depend on what might happen next. Because if the note was given and the reason was given for why they were there, something different might happen. If it wasn't, and then it just seemed like somebody had climbed over the barrier to get into Buckingham Palace, the consequence, what's going to happen next, will be very different. Okay, so think about this relating to what you have independently written, because it will go different ways depending on what you've said. So again, I probably do 5 or 10 minutes for this one. Just a short summary. Now remember, you're talking about the future now, so you're not reporting about what's happened already. We're not in the past tense, we're going into the future this time. So pause the video and get this paragraph down and written. Okay, so super, that is the entire article done. Now if you want to, you can draw a little picture that fits with the article and do a little caption to finish it off somewhere on your page. Also, don't forget to send us a fab picture, because we would love to read your newspaper reports that you've written. Obviously, we were really looking forward to doing these in school, so it'd be great to see what fantastic work you've come up with today. So well done for all the hard work. It's Friday, so we can have a long, relaxing weekend after our hard work today, and I will see you all again on Monday.